Grandpa, tell us the story about the bravest Indian again.
Oh, hell, you boys ought to have heard that story a bunch of times.
I know, Grandpa, but we want to hear it again. Tell us the story about the bravest Indian. Tell us the story about the bravest Indian. Tell us the story about the bravest Indian.
God dang, kids. You know what? I like telling the story about the bravest Indian. That's probably my best and happiest memory of my life. Boys, that's when I learned about the word bravery. Well, anyhow, I was a young man back then, and the West wasn't won yet. We rode mules mostly, contrary to what people think about horses winning the West. Of course, we'd been working all day. Now, I couldn't stand buffalo. Them goddamn things stunk so bad, and when you started skinning them sons of bitches, the putrid smell that would rise up from there smelled like an old outhouse. I couldn't stand to eat them, much less either. Well, anyhow, that was good money back in those days. I'd make $2 a piece off a big hide, so I got myself out there to the West. Now, there wasn't a lot of people around, and at night it would get real dark. Now, one particular night, it was real dark. There wasn't a star in the sky, no, not a moon, not a star. It was just black, like ash. Well, anyway, it wasn't quite raining, but the mist was coming down, and it was real cold. It was hard to keep that goddamn campfire burning. I had a bunch of wood I had gathered before it got dark underneath an old jacket, but it had a bunch of holes in it, and the wood would get wet. So we had a real unpredictable, crackly fire, and real loud. We was cuddling up close to that son of a bitch. I'd come across to 3 or 4 trappers the day before and kind of riled up with them because I wasn't too keen on skinning them goddamn sons of bitches by myself. But anyway, there was a guy named Sullivan there. He was sitting around a campfire, and the mist was coming down. We were all freezing cold. Anyway, he said that him and them fellers had come across some Injun gal like the day before and had their way with that little heathen devil worshiper. I don't care much about no Injuns, but I don't cotton much to being cruel to no woman folk. But anyhow, these fellows was laughing up a storm. They thought it was real funny how they'd sowed their oats with a little Indian gal and was teasing each other about the fact that they might have them a little half-breed. Well, I felt it was distasteful nonetheless. I figured I'd pick myself up in the morning and get out of here, but that wasn't what was going to happen. As we sat there in the mist, like I said, it wasn't quite raining. There was a mist coming down, and that goddamn fire would barely burn. And I was freezing my ass off. I'd wrap myself up in a couple of them damn buffalo hides, but after skinning about 300 of them in the last couple of weeks, I just couldn't stand the smell. I don't eat them, you know. Well, anyhow, we was sitting around that fire. You could see about 50 feet or so. And off in the distance, it was just black as coal. There wasn't a star in the sky. Well, I already told you that. But anyway, out of that darkness, way off in the distance, all of a sudden we saw a light. Now, we was camped next to a small pond of water. It was fetid for the most part, but we was able to drink it because we was real thirsty. All of a sudden, that fire, something, was burning in the background, way off in the distance. All of a sudden, we saw the holy fire of the smiling mighty Jesus was coming in the distance. We heard a thunder sound. Then we heard an animal like a demon blailing in the night. Now, nonetheless, this got everybody real scared as this thing thundered down like an old steam train right into the campfire. It was a full-grown bull elk. His antlers were all wound with grass and sticks that was burning on fire. It lit up the place like 12 noon. That animal rushed in, stepping over the guys and into the fire towards the water in a crazy stampede. Needless to say, a lot of fellows jumped to their feet. Now, I'm an old cuss. It takes me longer to get going, but this day, it saved my life. Because when them dumb young fellers jumped to their feet and were silhouetted around that fire, out of nowhere like 100 stinging hornets, arrows just come flying in from every direction and stabbing into those boys' bodies. An arrow hit him in the face, an arrow hit him in the arm. They grabbed their firearms and started shooting, blazing away. Meanwhile, I just laid there, paralyzed with fear. One man fell, and then another man fell, and the other ones kept blazing away, shooting bullets off in every direction. It was madness. Suddenly the Braves, their faces painted like demons with white stripes going diagonal, come jumping out of the darkness, wailing towards them. Jumping faster and higher than the burning elk, that Brave was on the first man in a lickety-split flash. Carrying a bow and a quiver full of arrows, he swung an instrument in the hand. It was basically just a stick with a big rock tied on the end. He bashed old Sullivan in the head, his head splitting open like a Halloween pumpkin. I could see the gray shit flying through the air, glistening in the fire, as the elk hit the water, boiling in a hideous, demonic howl. I'll tell you what, I was about to piss my drawers, but I jumped up. I saw that old Sullivan laid on the ground, his head split open. Scared the crap out of me. The gunfire was fast and furious. The air was full of cordite. I could barely see from the mist and the smoke from our barrels. Needless to say, some of them engines went down and some of them white boys went down. Full of arrows like a goddamn porcupine. But I saw some blood and some wounds. I saw that heathen bastard fall holding his gut. Now one of those fellas ran up to him, pulling out his bowie knife and reached his hand into the air to swing it down and stab that devil-worshipping heathen, all painted up like that, bleeding like a stuck pig. Well, out of nowhere, that Brave, the one with the spooky diagonal white stripes, he just jumped out of nowhere, flinging his weapon away and reaching around in one motion, pulling his bow, notching an arrow, and shoot, let that son of a bitch fly faster than a rattlesnake going for a goddamn... I don't know. I don't know what a rattlesnake goes to. Oh, sorry, character. Faster than a rattlesnake for one of them little cotton candy, pink, puffy little things from the carnival. You know what I'm talking about. Well, anyhow, the bravest engine I ever saw. He fired arrow after arrow. The men turned their attention in as his compatriots carried their wounded quickly away like little wolves. Meanwhile, that big old engine standing there with that spooky skull face, firing arrow after arrow. I could see the black obsidian tip glistening in the fire as it swung to its target. Man after man failed. People were blazing him, reloading and blazing him. He was getting hit. He got hit in the shoulder, the chest, the groin, the leg. That son of a bitch just stood there, blood flying out all directions, firing arrow after arrow after arrow, until he fell to the ground dead. I gotta tell you, I'd never seen a man that could stand up to that much firepower for that long. He was definitely the bravest Indian I ever saw. Now, years later, I found out that was the husband of that woman. Those boys did their business, too. 5 hours in the morning as I got my gear to clear out. They saw that engine laying on the ground, and they saw Sullivan there, head all split open like a broken egg. So they took that goddamn rock on the end of a stick and busted that engine's head. They busted that engine's head wider than a tramp's crotch in the middle of spring. Well, I grabbed my bottle and I went on to proceed to tame the Wild West. God bless the Republican white people.